Come see.
She was on her knees in the backyard, and the woman who put her there was watching, smiling. Abena was on her knees in the backyard, plate on the concrete, two Rottweilers eating right beside her, the Dallas heat pressed down on her neck like a hand. Flies circled the dog's bowls, and the plate that Folaka had set on the ground, the plate she told Abena to eat from like that, on her knees in the open air, still had steam rising off the rice. Eat, Folake had said. Not asked, not suggested, said, like she was talking to a third dog. And Abena. She picked up the fork. She lowered herself to the concrete, and she ate. Not because she was broken, because she had a son, and that son was 11 minutes away. The back door was still open. Abena could hear Folake inside the kitchen, the click of her heels on the tile, and the pour of her wine, the laugh she gave when she glanced through the window and saw Abena still there, still eating, still kneeling. "Emika!" Folake called to her husband somewhere in the house. "Come see. She's actually doing it." Abena didn't look up. She chewed slowly, swallowed, kept her back straight. Even on her knees, she refused to slouch. 15 years. That's how long Abena had worked in this house. 15 years of yes, ma'am. 15 years of cleaning their marble floors, cooking their meals, pressing their clothes, and never once raising her voice. And it all led to this: a plate on concrete, dogs beside her, a woman laughing through glass. But what Folake didn't know, what nobody in that house knew, was that the woman kneeling in her backyard had once owned a 4-bedroom house on the coast of Accra, had once employed a staff of her own, had once run a business that turned over more money in a single year than Folak's entire closet was worth. And the son she had given all of it up for? He was already in the car. 22 years ago, Abena Tete had everything. Then her son stopped breathing. Abena Tete came to America with nothing. Not nothing like she had very little. Nothing like she had literally sold the last piece of jewelry off her wrist at the airport in Accra and used the money to buy a one-way ticket to Houston. She was 34 years old. She had a 7-year-old son named Kwame, and Kwame was dying. Back in Ghana, Abena had been a woman people respected. She ran a textile business out of a warehouse near the Makola market. 12 employees, 3 delivery vehicles, a house with a garden and a gate. As a husband, until he left when Kwame was 2. She didn't need the husband. She had the business. She had her mother's wisdom, her father's discipline, and her own 2 hands. But when Kwame collapsed at school one afternoon, and the doctors said the words congenital heart defect and surgery only available abroad, none of that mattered anymore. The business? She sold it in 2 weeks, below market value, didn't even flinch. The house? Sold. The cars? Sold. Every CD she had, she converted to dollars. Every favor she was owed, she called in. And on a Tuesday morning, she boarded a flight to Houston with Kwame in her arms, a bag of medical records in her lap, and exactly $8,400 to her name. The surgery happened at Texas Children's Hospital. It took 9 hours. Abena sat in the waiting room the entire time. Didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't move. She just sat there with her fingers locked together and her lips whispering prayers she didn't even know she remembered. The doctor came out. His face was tired, but his eyes were soft. "Your son is going to be fine." Abena fell to the floor of the waiting room, pressed her forehead to the cold tile, and whispered, "Thank you," until a nurse had to help her up. Kwame lived, but the bill didn't disappear. The charity fund covered most of it, but most still left a gap that swallowed every dollar she had. And now she was in a country she didn't know, with a son who needed follow-up care, no proper visa, and nothing left. So Abena did what women like her have always done. She survived. She cleaned houses. She braided hair in apartment kitchens for $30 a head. She cooked jollof rice in bulk, and sold plates out of a cooler at flea markets. She worked every single day, not because she wanted to, but because Kwame needed her to. And every night when Kwame was asleep, she sat at the table in whatever apartment they were renting that month, and she wrote the same sentence in a notebook she kept under her pillow. "He will be something, because I gave everything." The job seemed like a blessing. It was, just not the kind she expected. When Kwame was 13, Abina got the job. A wealthy family in Preston Hollow, one of the richest neighborhoods in Dallas. Big house, white stone, iron gate, 3-car garage, the kind of house where even the mailbox had its own lighting. The family was the Ademolas. Adeyemika Ademola, a real estate developer from a well-known Nigerian family, had built a small empire buying commercial properties across North Texas. He was 42 at the time, tall, quiet, the kind of man who nodded more than he spoke. His wife, Folake, was the opposite. Folake Ademola was the kind of woman who wore designer labels to the grocery store, the kind of woman who measured her worth by the number of zeros in her husband's account. She hadn't worked a day in the 12 years of her marriage. Didn't need to, didn't want to. And she made sure everyone who stepped inside her house understood the hierarchy. You cook, you clean, you keep quiet, you stay out of my way. That was what she told Abena on the very first day. Abena nodded. "Yes, ma'am." The pay was good. $1,300 a week, cash. No taxes, no paperwork. Folake preferred it that way. It kept things clean, she said. What she really meant was, it kept Abena dependent. No records, no protections, no proof she ever worked there if things went wrong. Just Folake's word against hers. But $1,300 a week? That was more than Abena had ever earned in America. She could pay rent. She could buy Kwame new school clothes. She could put a little away each month. And most importantly, she could stay close enough to drive Kwame to his cardiology checkups at UT Southwestern every quarter. So she swallowed her pride, folded it up like a napkin and tucked it away. She showed up at 6 every morning. She left at 8 every night. She cooked 3 meals a day. She cleaned 4,000 square feet of marble and hardwood. She ironed clothes she could never afford. She polished shoes she would never wear. And she didn't complain. Not once. Amika was decent enough. Not kind, exactly, but not cruel. He would nod at Abena in the mornings. Sometimes he'd say, "Good morning, Miss Abena." He never yelled, never raised his hand. He treated her like furniture, invisible, but not offensive. Folake, on the other hand. Folake treated Abena like a stain she couldn't get rid of, like something stuck to the bottom of her shoe, like a reminder of something she didn't want to see. And Abena could feel it from the very first week, the way Folake's eyes moved over her, up and down, every morning, not checking her work, checking her place, making sure she was still beneath her. Every cruelty had a price. Abena paid it, every single time. It started small. "Abena, this floor has a streak. I do it again." "Abena, this rice is too soft. Throw it out and start over." "Abena, I told you to iron the napkins vertically. Are you deaf?" Small things, petty things, the kind of things that could be called high standards if you were being generous. But Abena wasn't fooled. She had seen this before. Back in Accra, women who married into money and forgot that the money wasn't theirs. Women who needed someone beneath them to feel like they were above someone. Folake needed Abena to be small so she could feel tall. And year by year, the cruelty grew. Year 2. Folake made Abena enter through the side door. "The front door is for family and guests. You are neither." Year 3. Folake took away Abena's lunch break. "You eat when the work is done. If the work is never done, well." Year 5. Folake threw a plate at the wall because the soup was too hot. The ceramic shattered 3 inches from Abena's face. Folake didn't apologize. She pointed at the broken pieces and said, "Clean it up and make more soup." Year 7. Folake told the gardener, in front of Abena. She's slow, but she's cheap. Like a used car you keep because the new ones cost too much. Year 10. Folake started making Abena wear a gray smock she ordered online. So people know what you are when they come to my house. Year 12. Folake banned Abena from using the bathrooms inside the house. Had a portable toilet installed in the utility closet by the garage. That's yours now. Don't let me catch you using mine. And Abena, every single time, lowered her eyes, nodded, said, "Yes, ma'am," and went back to work. And not because she was weak, because every Thursday evening she deposited $400 into a savings account at the Chase Bank on Lemon Avenue. And that account was for one thing and one thing only: Kwame. Kwame was thriving. Honor roll every semester. P classes stacked back to back. Captain of the debate team. Teachers called him gifted. Coaches wanted him for everything. Colleges were circling like planes waiting to land. If you believe the humble always rise, take a second right now and subscribe. Hit that notification bell, because what happens next in this story, you will not see it coming. And every time Folake's words cut into her skin, Abena would close her eyes for just a second and see Kwame's face, his smile, that gap between his front teeth he never grew out of. The way he said, "Mama, one day I'm going to buy you a house so big you'll get lost in it." She would open her eyes, pick up the rag, and keep cleaning. Every "yes, ma'am" was a brick. Every insult was mortar. Every humiliation was a beam in the ceiling. And the thing she was building, quietly, patiently, on her knees, was going to tower over that house one day. She just had to hold on a little longer. Folake never once asked Abena about her family. That was her first mistake. In 15 years of working for the Adamola family, not once did Folake ask Abena a personal question. Not once did she ask where Abena was from, where she lived after she left the house each night, whether she had children, whether she had a life outside those marble walls. To Folake, Abena was a function, a broom with legs, a stove with hands. So she never knew about Kwame. She never knew that the woman who scrubbed her toilets had a son who graduated summa cum laude from SMU's Lyle School of Engineering. She never knew that same son turned down 3 six-figure job offers to start his own company out of a one-bedroom apartment in Deep Ellum. She never knew that Kwame Tete, the boy who once lay on a hospital table at 7 years old with a heart that didn't work right, had built a biotech startup that developed a low-cost cardiac monitoring device. She never knew it attracted seed funding from 2 of the biggest venture capital firms in Texas, then Series A, then Series B, then a partnership with a major hospital network that made the front page of the Dallas Morning News. And she absolutely never knew that Kwame's company, Zenith Innovations, had just closed a deal worth $94 million. Abena knew. She knew everything. She had every article saved in a folder on her phone. She read them late at night in her small apartment on Gaston Avenue, sitting on the edge of her bed with tears running down her cheeks and a smile so wide it hurt. But she never said a word at work, never mentioned her son, never showed a photograph, never bragged, never even hinted. When the part-time housekeeper asked why she stayed in a job where the woman of the house treated her worse than the dogs, Abena always said the same thing. "I have my reasons." Kwame, for his part, had been begging his mother to quit for 3 years straight. "Mama, please. I have more money than I know what to do with." You don't need to work another day in your life. Let me take care of you." Abena would shake her head. "When it's time, I'll go. But I go on my terms, not running, walking out the front door." "Mama, Kwame." Her voice would get that edge. The edge that meant the conversation was over and nothing on earth was going to reopen it. "I started this with nothing. I built you from nothing. I don't run from people like her. When I leave that house, it will be because I chose to, not because she finally broke me. She will never break me." Kwame would go quiet, because he knew that tone. He knew it from hospital rooms and late-night apartment kitchens and every hard conversation he'd ever had with his mother. It was the tone of a woman who had measured the cost and already paid it. But 2 nights ago, something changed. Abena had called Kwame. Her voice was different, not the usual tired, something deeper, something emptied out. "What happened?" Kwame asked. Long pause. He could hear her breathing. "She made me eat on the floor today." Kwame didn't say anything for 5 full seconds. "Not inside," Abena continued. "Outside, on the concrete, next to the dogs." More silence. But this silence had weight. This silence had heat. "Kwame, are you there?" "I'm coming tomorrow." "Kwame, don't do anything." "Mama, I'm coming tomorrow." This time, Abena didn't argue, because she heard something in her son's voice she'd never heard before, and it sounded like the end of something. It was supposed to be a normal Saturday. Folake made sure it wasn't. Saturday morning, 9 o'clock. Dallas heat already pushing 92 degrees. Folake was hosting a brunch. 12 of her closest friends, the kind of women who posted Bible verses on Instagram and treated service workers like shadows. They were coming at 11. Abena had been cooking since 5:30 in the morning. Jollof rice, fried plantains, pepper soup with goat meat, grilled chicken marinated in suya spice, chin-chin dusted with powdered sugar, everything from scratch. Folake never hired caterers. "Why would I pay strangers when I have you?" By 10, the house smelled like a 5-star restaurant. The dining table was set with white linen, gold-rimmed plates, crystal water glasses, and fresh flowers Abena had cut and arranged at dawn. Folake came downstairs in a cream-colored dress and gold heels. She walked through the kitchen without looking at Abena, inspected the table, adjusted one fork by 1/4 of an inch, then turned around. "The plantains are too dark." Abena glanced at the serving dish. They were perfect, golden, crisp at the edges. "Ma'am, they're too dark. Fry new ones." "Yes, ma'am." She fried new ones. Folake's friends arrived at 11 sharp. They poured into the dining room like a perfume commercial. Air kisses, rehearsed laughs, designer bags placed just so on the backs of chairs. Abena served, silently, plate after plate, glass after glass, refilling water pitchers, clearing bread baskets, moving through the room like she wasn't there. Because that's what Folake wanted. Invisible labor, food that appeared as if by magic, a woman who existed only as a pair of hands. At one point, a guest in a red dress looked up from her plate and said, "Folake, oh my goodness. This jollof is absolutely incredible. Who made this?" Before Abena could open her mouth, Folake laughed. Light, easy, practiced. "She follows my recipe. I taught her everything she knows." Abena said nothing. She turned and walked back to the kitchen. She stood at the sink, gripped the edge of the counter, and breathed. The brunch lasted 2 hours. When the last guest's car pulled out of the driveway, Folake walked into the kitchen where Abena was elbow-deep in soapy water, washing the gold-rimmed plates by hand. "I saw you smiling when Bianca complimented the food." Abena kept washing. "I wasn't smiling, ma'am." "Don't lie to me. I saw it. You were smiling like you cooked it yourself." Abena turned off the faucet, dried her hands slowly on the towel by the sink. "I did cook it, ma'am. I always cook the food." The silence that followed was the loudest thing Abena had ever heard in that house. Folake's eyes narrowed. She stepped closer. Her heels clicked on the tile floor. Click, 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 like a countdown. "Excuse me?" Abena didn't repeat it. She didn't need to. They both heard it. Something shifted behind Folake's eyes. It wasn't anger. It was worse. It was the cold, calculating fury of a woman who had just been quietly challenged and couldn't let it stand. "You know what?" Folake said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You think you're special because you can fry plantains? Let me remind you what you are." She walked to the counter, picked up the plate of leftover jollof rice that Abena had set aside for her own lunch, carried it across the kitchen, opened the back door with her hip, stepped outside into the yard where the two Rottweilers, Bruno and Max, were lying in the shade by the fence. She placed the plate on the concrete, right between the dogs' water bowls. Then she turned around, looked at Abena. "There, that's where you eat today, outside, with them." She pointed at the dogs. "Since you want to talk back like you're somebody." Abena stared at her. "Go on," Folake said. "You're hungry, aren't you? Worked so hard, didn't you? Go eat your food, out there, on the ground, where you belong." Emeka was in his study. The door was closed. He either didn't hear or didn't care. With Emeka, it was always hard to tell the difference. Abena looked at the plate on the ground, looked at the dogs, looked back at Folake, and she walked outside, lowered herself to her knees, and ate. And because her phone had already buzzed twice in her apron pocket. 2 texts from Kwame. "Leaving now." And 20 minutes. The engine was the first thing the neighbors heard. Then the whole street went quiet. The sound came first, not a car sound. A growl, low and deep, like thunder trapped under pavement. The kind of sound that vibrates through concrete and rattles windows before you even see what's making it. Folake was pouring herself a glass of wine in the kitchen when she heard it. She glanced out the front window. A matte black Lamborghini Urus was pulling through the open gate of their driveway, not stopping at the curb, not pausing at the entrance, coming straight through the gate, like it belonged there. Folake frowned. She set the glass down. She didn't recognize the car. Emeka came out of his study, and he'd heard it too. "Are you expecting someone?" Folake asked. "No." They both walked to the front door. The Lamborghini stopped. The engine cut off. The silence that replaced it was almost louder than the growl itself. The driver's door opened. A young man stepped out, tall, 6'2", lean but broad in the shoulders, dark skin that caught the Dallas sun like polished mahogany. He wore a simple white linen shirt, tailored navy trousers, and clean white sneakers. No chains, no rings, no sunglasses, just a thin gold watch on his left wrist. His hair was cut low and sharp. His jawline was clean. And his face was calm. The kind of calm that doesn't come from peace. It comes from knowing exactly who you are and exactly what you came to do. He closed the car door behind him, didn't rush, looked up at the house, and then walked toward the front door like he owned the street. Emeka opened the door before he reached it. "Can I help you?" Emeka asked. The young man looked at him, not rude, not cold, just measured, like he was deciding how much of himself to reveal. "My name is Kwame Tete," he said. His voice was even, steady. "I'm here for my mother." Folake was standing behind Emeka now. She looked at the young man, then at the Lamborghini sitting in the driveway, then back at the young man. "Your mother?" Folake repeated. "Who is your mother?" Abena Tete." He paused. "She works for you." Something flickered across Folake's face. Confusion first, then recognition, then something she couldn't control. Something cold and sharp that crawled up her spine and settled in her chest like a stone. The maid?" Folake's voice dropped to half its usual volume. "Abena is your mother?" "Yes." "And that's—" She pointed at the Lamborghini. Her finger was trembling. "That's your car?" Kwame didn't answer that question. He looked past Folake, past Emeka, into the house. "Where is she?" "She's in the—" Emeka started. "She's in the back," Folake interrupted, her voice thinning like paper held to a flame. "She's eating her lunch." Kwame looked at Folake, and for the first time since he stepped out of that car, something moved behind his eyes, something that wasn't calm at all. "Show me." Folake didn't move. "Show me." Emeka stepped to the side. Kwame walked through the house. His sneakers were silent on the marble floor. He passed the dining room, the gold-rimmed plates still stacked from brunch, and the crystal glasses still drying on a towel. He passed the kitchen, the scent of jollof still thick in the air. He reached the back door, and he saw his mother, on her knees, on the concrete, a plate on the ground between two dog bowls, two Rottweilers lying 3 feet away. Kwame stopped in the doorway, his jaw clenched so tight the muscles in his neck stood out like cables. His hands, the same hands that had signed a $94 million contract 2 weeks ago, curled into fists at his sides. Abena looked up. "Kwame," she said it softly, like a prayer she had been whispering under her breath for 20 minutes. "Mama," his voice cracked. Just once, just for a second. Then he swallowed it down. "Get up, please, get up." Abena stood slowly. Her knees were stiff. The concrete had pressed lines into her skin. Kwame walked to her, took both her hands in his, looked at them, the calluses across her palms, the burn marks on her wrists from 15 years of hot pans, the dry, cracked skin from cleaning chemicals. He pressed her hands to his face, closed his eyes, and held them there. Behind them, Folake stood at the back door, and for the first time in 15 years, she was the one who had nothing to say. "You made her eat on the ground," Kwame said. He didn't turn around. His voice was low, controlled, the kind of controlled that sits 1 inch from something dangerous. Folake opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Like a dog." Kwame turned now, slowly. "You made my mother, the woman who gave up everything she had so I could live, eat on the ground, next to your dogs." "I didn't mean to," Folake started. "Don't." One word. And the air in the backyard changed temperature. Emeka appeared in the doorway. He looked at Abena standing on the patio, the plate on the ground, the dogs, his wife's face, the young man with the Lamborghini, and for the first time in all the years Abena had worked in that house, something like shame moved across Emeka Ademola's face. Kwame turned back to his mother. "Mama, get your things. We're leaving." "Kwame, Now, Mama. Right now." Abena looked at her son. Then she looked at Folake. And in that look was 15 years. Every "yes, ma'am," every bitten tongue, every plate she served with a smile she didn't feel, every floor she scrubbed on her hands and knees, every silent prayer she whispered in the utility closet that doubled as her bathroom. She untied her apron, folded it, neatly, precisely. At the way she folded everything, and set it on the patio railing. Then she walked toward the back door. Folake stepped aside, instinctively, like something invisible pushed her. As Abena passed, she stopped, looked at Folake, eye to eye. For the first time in 15 years, she didn't lower her gaze. "I cooked every meal you ever took credit for," Abena said. Her voice was quiet, but clear. "I raised your children when you were too busy shopping to hold them. I kept your house standing when your marriage was falling apart. And you made me eat with the dogs." She paused. Let the words land. "I forgive you, but you will remember this day for the rest of your life." Then she walked through the kitchen, through the dining room, through the front door, not the side door, not the service entrance, the front door. Kwame followed, but at the threshold he stopped, reached into his pocket, pulled out a business card, held it between 2 fingers. "Emeka." Emeka turned. Kwame extended the card. Emeka took it, looked down. "Kwame Tete, CEO and founder Zenith Innovations." Emeka's lips parted. His eyebrows lifted. His grip on the card tightened. "Zenith?" His voice came out dry. "Zenith Innovations? That's the firm that funded your Frisco development last year," Kwame finished. The $12 million bridge loan your bank turned down 3 times. My firm backed it, through a subsidiary you never traced. Emeka's hand started trembling. The card shook between his fingers. And the Cedar Hill project you're trying to close next month? Kwame continued. The one that needs a cosign from a capital partner you've been courting for the last 6 weeks? That partner is also mine. Dead silence. The kind of silence that swallows a room whole. She could have told you who I was at any time, Kwame said, nodding toward the front door where Abena had just walked out. She could have used my name, dropped my company, made a single phone call. She never did. Not once. For 15 years. That is the kind of woman you had cleaning your toilets, and you made her eat with the dogs. He looked at Folake. She was leaning against the hallway wall, one hand over her mouth, her legs shaking so badly Kwame thought she might fall. I won't be backing the Cedar Hill project, Kwame said. And the Frisco bridge loan? It comes due in 60 days. I'd suggest you find another partner. He turned and walked through the front door. The Dallas sun hit him full in the face. Outside, Abena was standing by the Lamborghini. The afternoon light was catching the matte black paint. She looked small next to it, small and tired and, for the first time in a very long time, free. Kwame opened the passenger door for his mother. She looked at the car, ran her fingers along the edge of the door, then looked at her son. It's too flashy, she said. Kwame laughed, a real laugh. The kind that starts deep in the chest and shakes loose everything that's been held tight for too long. Get in, Mama. She got in. Kwame walked around to the driver's side. Before he opened the door, he looked back at the house one more time. Folak was standing in the doorway. She wasn't smiling anymore. She wasn't angry. She wasn't anything. And she was just standing there, watching the woman she had spent 15 years trying to make small, sit in the passenger seat of a car that cost more than every piece of jewelry Folak had ever owned. Kwame got in, started the engine. That growl filled the street again, low, deep, alive. They pulled out of the driveway, through the gate, down the tree-lined street of Preston Hollow. Abena didn't look back, not once. Some people wait for karma. Abena didn't wait. She outlasted it. 3 weeks later. Abena stood in the living room of a 4-bedroom house in Lakewood, a quiet neighborhood east of downtown Dallas, where the trees were older than the houses and the porches were wide enough to hold rocking chairs and lemonade and long conversations with people you love. Kwame had bought it for her. Cash, no mortgage, on no negotiations. He just handed her the keys one afternoon and said, "This is yours, Mama. You never have to clean another person's house again." Abena walked through every room slowly. She touched the walls, opened the closets, stood in the kitchen, her kitchen, and ran her hands along the marble countertops. Then she sat down at the kitchen table, folded her hands, and cried. Not because she was sad, because she was finished. 15 years of swallowing, 15 years of kneeling, 15 years of being treated like nothing by a woman who had everything and understood nothing. And now, it was over. She cried until there was nothing left. Then she wiped her face with the back of her hand, stood up, and started making jollof rice. Because that's who Abena was. A woman who cried when she needed to. And then got up and fed people. As for the Ademolas, the Frisco loan came due. Emeka scrambled. He called every bank in Texas, every private lender, every contact he had ever shaken hands with. But word had spread, quietly, the way it always does in real estate circles, that Zenith Innovations had pulled their backing from Ademola Capital. And in that world, when the biggest name walks away, nobody else steps forward. The Frisco project collapsed. The Cedar Hill deal died on the table. 2 other investors pulled out of separate developments, spooked by the pattern. Nobody wanted to be the last one holding the bag. Within 6 months, Ademola Capital was bleeding money. Not dead, but wounded. Deep. The kind of wound that takes years to heal. if it heals at all. And Folake? She stopped hosting brunches, stopped posting on social media, let go of the gardener and the part-time driver and the weekend nanny. Started doing her own grocery shopping, started cleaning her own house, and every time she knelt on that marble floor with a rag in her hand, she thought of Abina. She thought about the woman who had done the exact same thing on the exact same floor for 15 years, without a single complaint, without a single tear, without a single moment of recognition. She thought about the plate on the concrete, the dogs, the smile she gave through the kitchen window, and she understood, maybe for the first time in her entire life, what it costs to be cruel to someone who never deserved it. The evening before Abena moved into her new home, Kwame sat with her on the porch of her old apartment on Gaston Avenue, and the sun was doing that thing it does in Dallas, turning the whole sky orange and pink and gold like someone dipped the horizon in honey. They sat side by side, 2 plastic chairs, 2 glasses of water. "Mama," Kwame said, "I need to ask you something." "Ask." "Why did you stay? All those years. You could have quit. You could have told her who I was. You could have walked out. Why did you stay?" Abina was quiet for a long time. She watched the sky change color. She watched a bird land on the telephone wire across the street. Then she looked at her son. "Because leaving would have been for me," she said, "and everything I did was for you." Kwame's eyes filled with water. He blinked hard, looked away. "Every plate I served, every floor I scrubbed, every word I swallowed, it went into your school fees, your textbooks, your first apartment deposit, your first suit for your first investor meeting." She reached over and held his hand. "You are the house I built, Kwame. You are every brick, every nail, every sacrifice I ever made is standing right in front of me. 6'2" with his father's jaw and his mother's stubbornness." Kwame tried to speak. Couldn't. "So don't ask me why I stayed," Abina said. "Ask me if it was worth it." "Was it?" he whispered. Abina smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't come from happiness. It comes from completion. "Look at you." Of course it was. They sat there until the sun disappeared. 2 people on a porch in East Dallas. A mother and her son. A woman who gave everything and a man who became everything she gave it for. And if you're wondering whether Folake ever apologized, she tried. Once. 3 months later. She drove to Abina's new house in Lakewood, parked at the curb, sat in the car for 20 minutes, then walked up the steps and rang the bell. Abina opened the door. Folak looked different, thinner, older. The designer clothes were gone. She wore a plain black dress, no makeup. Her eyes were red. Folaka swallowed hard. Her chin trembled. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Abina." Abina looked at her for a long time, a full 10 seconds, the kind of 10 seconds that stretches into something much longer. Then she opened the door wider. "Come inside," Abina said. "I just made jollof rice." Folaka broke, right there on the doorstep. Her shoulders shook. Tears ran down her cheeks, and she didn't even try to wipe them, because she finally understood. Grace is not the absence of power. Grace is having every reason to close the door, and opening it wider instead. That's the kind of woman Abena Teta was, the kind who ate on the concrete, wiped her mouth, stood up, and then set a table for the woman who put her there. Abena gave up everything so her son could live. She worked 15 years on her knees so he could stand tall. She swallowed every cruelty, absorbed every insult, turned every humiliation into a brick in the foundation of something extraordinary. If she had walked away, if she had let pride win, Kwame might never have become who he is. But she didn't. She stayed. She endured. And fate rewarded every single second of her patience. If you want to see who fate visits next, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because in these stories, The proud always fall, and the humble build empires on their knees.
Años exactamente, bueno, no exactamente, ¿no? Un grupo de soñadores en La Paz decidió fundar algo que trascendería generaciones. El glorioso Club Bolívar. No imaginaron que... Oye, me he esforzado al hacer el discurso. ¿Qué ponen ZZ, chat? Basta, me he esforzado, se los juro que me he esforzado, bro, basta. Por favor, me he esforzado en el discurso, respéteme un poquito, chat. Bueno, igual lo voy a leer, me la chupan, la verdad. Chat, nefastos. Son unos envidiosos, ¿saben? Son unos envidiosos. ¿En qué me quedé? No imaginaron que ese nombre se convertiría en un sinónimo de grandeza, lucha y de orgullo nacional. 101 años después, Bolívar no es solo un club, es un sentimiento que se hereda, que se sufre y se celebra. Últimamente sufrimos mucho por Robato, ¿no? Es el latido de miles de hinchas que en cada victoria y en cada caída nunca abandonan, ¿verdad? Nomás. Porque ser celeste no es una elección, es una forma de vivir. Muy bien, qué lindo, un aplauso. Bravo, bravo. Muchachos, tremendo discurso. Buenas noches, Edito, ¿cómo estás? Por lo menos ponte tu chompita, pues un busito para leer el discurso. A ver, cállate, Gabo, ¿vos quieres ser baneado? Este discurso lo he hecho en mi cama, pensando en lo que es ser bolivarista, la verdad. Un aplauso, por favor, y con ayuda también del gran ChatGPT. Un aplauso para ChatGPT. Ah, ¿cuál era la finalización de un ratito? Dice, que estos 101 años sean solo el comienzo de muchas más llenos de alegría. Felicidades, Academia. Felicidades, Bolívar. ¡Bravo! Aplausos para ChatGPT, muchachos. Para vos no, dice. Buenas noches, muchachos, ¿cómo están? Gracias por estar aquí, perdón por prender tan tarde. La verdad estaba viendo mi serie, estaba viendo el regreso de Justin Bieber. Estaba, bueno, toda la tarde me vi fútbol, hasta vi el partido del Tigre. Vi el partido de River, vi el partido de Oriente. Las declaraciones de Martins, tremendo lo de Martins, bebé, le tiró palo a Villegas, pero bien tirado. Huevada, en su cama lo hizo todo pajeado pensando en el... No, ¿qué dice este Arielito? Oye, ¿quieres vamos, no? Mi sobrino de kinder redacta mejor. Dile eso a ChatGPT, yo no he redactado. ¿Qué me estás molestando a mí? Felicidades. Qué pasado. Pues la verdad nomás. ¿Qué quieren que les diga? A ver, ¿qué les puedo decir, muchachos? Yo no publiqué nada en mi página, la verdad no hice nada estos días. Han sido momentos difíciles. Bien triste, ¿no? Mentira. Pero no, muchachos, bueno. Quiero felicitar a todos los que son bolivaristas. Y hoy en día más que nunca, ¿no? Que es difícil ser bolivarista. En el sentido de todo el contexto que estamos pasando con el técnico. Pero si lo ven por el otro lado también, hay que sentirnos orgullosos porque hemos llegado a estos 101 años. Creo que como la institución mejor parada, tanto económicamente, futbolísticamente y dirigencialmente diría, pero no, creo que no, ahí nos falta, ¿no? Ese eslabón para poder ser una institución sólida. Y como ayer creo que lo decía Dardo Gómez en su publicación en el Cholet, que Dios mío, ¿de dónde cagan tanta plata, bebés? Más fuegos pirotécnicos que en el aniversario de La Paz, no mames. Tremendo, felicidades a los del Cholet, y a ver si pasan pues algunos moneys. No, mentira. Que dijo que el dirigente tiene que estar siempre al lado del hincha, y eso es mucha verdad, y no es por darle palo a Claure, porque él tendrá sus funciones, las cosas que tienen que hacer, pero creo que por esa parte que estoy... Uy, ¿qué? No, todavía no va a arrancar la fiesta, Tucán, tranquilo. y por esa parte creo que está bien, ¿no? Está bien, y bueno, se vienen unas futuras elecciones, donde el principal candidato es Dardo Gómez, a seguir manejando lo que es este club tan bonito que es Bolívar, ¿no? Por detrás, obviamente, yo creo que tiene que haber gente que lo asesore. Espera, ¿mi gatita se echó pipí? No, ya, más bien. Me ha asustado, chicos, la verdad, me ha asustado. Ya saben ustedes, rayada está mi gatita últimamente, ¿no? No, ¿qué dice este Edipox? Y bueno, muchachos, nos espera, creo, un futuro grandioso. Yo lo dije, creo que esta es una oportunidad ya con el estadio de una vez establecernos como un club de fútbol, pero serio, y fuera de ser autosostenible, que se proyecte a más, ¿me entiendes? No estancarnos en solo ser un club boliviano, sino ya empezar a soñar con, no sé, a ver, por ejemplo, la venta de butacas en el estadio, venta de marketing, merchandising, que se vaya ampliando más las sociedades, ¿me entienden? O sea, yo creo que si una cabeza maneja bien todo eso, creo que podemos despegar, ¿me entiendes? Y no estar ahí creando leyes de mierda con el gobierno, pidiendo perdón para que nos perdonen los impuestos, ¿no? De los gatos, ¿no? Entonces, creo que, o ser un club que está a punto de desaparecer, como Wilstermann, que desapareció de la liga, pero está a punto de desaparecer, pero absolutamente de todo el fútbol. O ser clubes que le están mangueando el auspicio a la UTV y chupándosela al presidente de la federación por subsistir. Entonces, creo que Bolívar es muy grande y tiene, creo que, trascender. Eso es lo que nos falta, trascender, dar ese pasito para trascender y lograr los objetivos que siempre hemos querido, ya sea una Copa Sudamericana o una Copa Libertadores, ¿no? Y siempre tiene que ir de la mano. Estos últimos años, creo que es la verdad, se han ido alejando a las generaciones bolivaristas, al hincha común, al hincha fanático, a todos los tipos de hinchas se han ido alejando del club, por justamente el mal trabajo que se ha ido realizando estos últimos años en Bolívar. ¿Qué decía Valdivia? Creo que dijo que dejó un club autosostenible. O sea, sí, no vamos a decir que no, ¿no? Económicamente creo que se dejó un club autosostenible. A ver, Solís, no pidas Gartic. Ya les he dicho qué cosa de Gartic. Hoy día es aniversario del club. Déjame hablar a ver de mi club, Solís. Igual en el grupo de WhatsApp, no Tucán, jugaremos Gartic. No quiero dibujar huevadas, déjame, no voy a jugar Gartic. Ya les he dicho, si quieren dibujar, agarren un cuadernito y empiezan a dibujar sus huevadas. No me vengan a molestar a mí con su Gartic. Saludos, Reyisita, ¿cómo estás? ¿Todo bien? Gartic, temática Bolívar. No, métanse su Gartic por el poto, ya les he dicho. Y bueno, muchachos, ¿en qué estaba? Es que me niero, muchachos, cada vez Gartic, basta, no quiero jugar Gartic. Vayan a jugar Gartic con sus minas. Goclingo, huevadas hablas. Ya, espera, ¿qué hables, Ignacio Loza? Auri. Y bueno, muchachos, creo que sí, yo me quedo con eso. Este martes tenemos un partido muy importante en lo económico. Para mí, muy importante para ver qué está el club de cara a este año. Porque creo que es indispensable ganarle a ese equipo. En Copa Libertadores, obviamente por los 3 puntos y más, pero pensando a futuro, creo que es muy importante que se vea buen fútbol, ¿no? Y que la gente ya esté un poquito más tranquila con el funcionamiento del equipo. Ayer contra Bebé, bueno, el día sábado contra Bebé, se jugó un buen partido, no digo que un malo partido, creo que empezaron a aparecer personas, o bueno, jugadores que no estaban apareciendo, como es el Papu Velázquez, y muchos más, ¿no? Entonces, interesante. Y bueno, apareció Cauterucho, que en el partido de Libertadores no había aparecido ni de sombra. Parece que Cauterucho solo le mete goles a equipos como ABB. Y preocupa un poquito eso, ¿no? Hoy ganó el Tigre, está puntero con nosotros. Nacional Potosí también está compartiendo la punta con nosotros y muchos más que vienen bien entonándose en lo que es este torneo, ¿no? Que empezó retardísimo y creo que nos va a pesar no solo a nosotros, sino a los demás equipos que están participando en copas internacionales, ya sea Blooming el caso, ¿no? Y otros más. Mete gol equipo chicos como Dorni, pero Dorni ni jugó. ¿Qué dicen, chicos? ¿Qué dicen? La era Robato es la peor de todos los tiempos, bebé. Tomando en cuenta el centenario que es una vez en la vida. Sí, es la peor. La peor. De los últimos 10 años, ¿se podría decir que lo de Robato es lo peor que nos pudo pasar? A ver, piensen. Es que con lo que me dice el técnico de... A ver... Ustedes pónganse a pensar, si tu técnico te dice que el objetivo era solo clasificar a Libertadores y que no estaba obligado a ser campeón, puta, ahí me la bajó mal, amigos, sinceramente, me la bajó mal. Podía aceptarle todas sus huevadas y todo, pero cuando dijo eso, es como que hizo sentir me hizo sentir un club más del montón, ¿me entiendes? Un Nacional Potosí, una Aurora, no sé, otros equipos bien X, así me hizo sentir, la verdad. Por eso yo voy